is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Biblical Hitman. It's your host, Steven. I got Dr. Aaron Judkins in the house, ladies and gentlemen. He's an author, researcher, and he's also been all over the places in the world, especially biblical sites, which we're going to get into a lot of this stuff, folks. But hey, listen, if it's your first time you're returning, you want to support the channel, head on over to YouTube. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, and drop a comment down below about all the things that we get into or anything that we didn't get into. And plus, that's the only place you are all allowed to put your opinions. So flood the gates, okay, with the comments as well. Listen, hey, we're on audio platforms. We're not just on the video side of things. So support the show over on Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much on everything podcast related. If you like the show, if you like what I have to say, if you like the guests, you had a good time, be sure to drop a 5-star review, drop that follow, and hit that notification bell, because we do post 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. I'm thinking about switching it up to Friday morning and Friday night, audio in the morning and video at night, but we'll see what happens. So Dr. Aaron Judkins, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
Yeah. So you're an author, you're a researcher, you've done a lot of adventuring in your life, and we got the opportunity to meet each other at SpiracyCon and with, the event John Pounders and Visual Disturbance and many other content creators who were able to make the event such a fun time.
Yeah.
We got to meet there, and you're an author, you get into your book and everything. You get into, I'm going to butcher this, Gobekli Tepe.
You got it. Gobekli Tepe.
Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay. All right. So for the folks that aren't familiar with you, your work, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and where they can support you the most.
Yeah. So I'm Aaron Judkins. I'm a biblical archaeologist. I've done a lot of work over in the Middle East since 2004 on selective excavations, including the Pool of Siloam in 2004, when we initially discovered the steps to the Pool of Siloam, at Mount Ebal with Adam Zertol, the Tower of David there in Ir David in Jerusalem, and then the Qumran Caves, where we discovered the 12th Dead Sea Scroll Cave back in 2017. So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was major. That was major international news. It was in conjunction with Hebrew University and Liberty University with Dr. Randall Price, and it made the front cover of National Geographic in the December 2018 issue.
Awesome. And so, how many books have you written, by the way?
I've written 8 books. A couple of them are not really books. They're more journals about expeditions.
Okay.
So they're not, you're not going to find them, at the bookstore. They're not ISBN'd, but I had some really good advice before I left for Mount Ararat back in 2013 to go climb that mountain in search of Noah's Ark, and someone asked me if I was going to journal, and I said, well, no, I'm not going to journal. I don't do that, And they said, Aaron, this is really a historic occasion for you. You need to journal. So I said, yeah, okay, yeah, great. I'll do that. And I did, and I kept a detailed record every day. So at the end of the day, when I got back into my tent, then I would take time to write. And there ended up being a timeline for the movie Finding Noah in a lot of cases to go back and see what was happening. So it worked out really good. But someone asked me, I was doing a radio show one time, and a caller called in and said, hey, we would like a copy, to read your journal. And this was a private journal. I was never intending to make it public. So I said, yeah, that's a pretty cool idea, So I removed some sensitive and personal information out of it and just made a public version. So I did that with the Noah's Ark, which is right behind me, by the way. This one right here, The Quest for Noah's Ark. And then this one, which is the journal for the Dead Sea Scroll Cave 12. So just pretty much my field notes and, the discoveries as we went along. I give you For instance, I give you some of the history and the background, especially with Noah's Ark, all the ancient historical sightings and the modern day searches and sightings. So it really catches you up to speed. And then I have another one, which is actually, it's off camera, but it's right here. And this one's called the Peru Expedition Journal, The Mystery of the Elongated Skulls. And this is about my journey to Peru with L.A. Marzulli, where I studied these elongated skulls. These are actually skulls that when we went out to the Changos area, the city of the dead, these skulls were actually in the sand like this. And so
Oh,
I
wow.
stopped. Yeah, this is a photo I took. I stopped and took a photo of these skulls here. And on the very back cover, matter of fact, it was at the end of the day, I was leaving, and you can see this is all ground and sand right here. But right here is a skull buried in that sand. And I stopped and took a picture of that too. So it's just it's full color pages. That's me and Chase Kleski there in Puma. No, this is in Tiwanaku. So it really just it gives you some really good ideas about the journey and just my course of of how I went through it. This was, of course, this is the book version of it. Mine is all handwritten out, but as you can see here, it's just got different color photographs and things like that. So those are some of the books that I've done, and then including, the latest one here on Decoding Göbekli Tepe.
That's awesome. I mean, so as an archaeologist, as someone who's on a journey geographically all around the world, especially biblical sites, just ancient sites in general, what's the feeling like? Does it put the Bible in a different perspective for you?
The first time I went to Israel in 2004, that hit home with me. I live in Texas, and as you know, the saying, everything's bigger in Texas. So I'm used to wide open spaces, hundreds and hundreds of miles, or, across, it'll take you 8 hours or 9 hours to cross the state. Maybe 12 if you go from the east to west part of it to El Paso, but there's a lot of vast territory in Texas. And so I had in my mind, a picture of what I thought it was like, and it was so much closer together that it really stunned me. I mean, you're just in such close proximity to everything, and then of course we traveled all over the country from the north, all the way down to the south and the coast, and it's Israel's very tiny, so it doesn't take you long to go either way, but just where if you're just oriented in Jerusalem, proper, there's so much there that that really hit home with me, how small, like compact, how close everything is together. So yeah, it's amazing. Most of all that is so much older, thousands and thousands of years older, than what we're used to. We're used to things that are hundreds of years old here, but there is so different. But
Yeah, the history is
yeah,
on a totally different level,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've also done a lot of, research, and you've done a lot of exploring, especially Göbekli Tepe. I think I got it right that time. But you also wrote a book based off that. What book is this, so that the audience, is aware of it? What's the title again for this book?
It's called Decoding Göbekli Tepe, Biblical Anatolia and the Watchers.
Okay,
And
and this is supposedly one of the oldest sites that we've, just as a civilization, have unearthed,
yeah,
right?
it's a site in southeastern Turkey, now pronounced Turkey A, as of recent change, but um, it's a site in southeastern Turkey that is supposedly the oldest prehistoric archaeological site regarding the Stone Age and a temple complex ever discovered. It was verified by the original excavator, Dr. Klaus Schmidt, who excavated the site, I think starting in the 95 or 1996. He had just wrapped up, I think, a dig in the region, and he was asked to come over and take a look at this site. This site was mislabeled as a Byzantine cemetery back in the 60s. And so he went over there and immediately recognized, without having any excavations done, but just what he saw on the surface, immediately recognized that it was what they call Neolithic. In this case, pre-pottery Neolithic, which in our vernacular would be Stone Age. Why pre-pottery? Because it's before the invention of pottery. So they label it pre-pottery Neolithic. They have a A, and then they have a /B. This is labeled as pre-pottery Neolithic A. So before the invention of pottery, and then as Klaus Schmidt began to excavate in the team, they realized that they had hit a huge temple complex built out of megalithic architecture, and that is not supposed to be in the Stone Age.
Oh, wow. Wow. So the timing is kind of, are they figuring out the time exactly? I mean, how are they dating a lot of these things? Is it just kind of carbon date or
Carbon date's a standard. That the absence of pottery is another way they date the site. There's a lot of stoneware, no pottery, so it gets labeled pre-pottery Neolithic A. And the carbon dating they're doing on the organic material that's been found there. They've also dated some plaster remnants that's been discovered in the walls, uh, and I think probably maybe the floors there around Göbekli Tepe. A lot of people don't know that that people used plaster back in those days. It's a burnt lime plaster, and they heat it. They make a slurry. They heat it, and and then they take it and they daub it on the walls and the floors. They only used, I think, in the walls. It's a natural waterproofer, to keep your walls sealed up. Um, and uh, and actually, there's an aesthetic about it as well. But they only plastered the floors in what they considered sacred space. So not everything was plastered on the floors, but where they had some kind of ritual or ceremony in these enclosures. And this is not just at Gobekli Tepe, but at Navali Chori and in other places. These sacred rooms or sacred spaces had their floors plastered, which means it's set aside for a special purpose. So plaster was used back in those days, and so they're dating that as well. But the main dating is the objects as well that they find there. Of course, there's grains, there's animal bones, pollen, um, things organic that they're dating. But it definitely is it's a big site there. As a matter of fact, I think it's about a 22-acre site.
oh wow. I even think, who is it? It's the World Economic Forum that owns the excavation and the
Um,
construction or whatever.
I don't know that they own it, but they certainly donated. Uh, they're the main funder now for that. They donated $20 million to that particular dig, and so I think there's I don't know all the details. I read it months and months ago now, probably 6 or 9 months ago now, so I don't remember all the details. But there's a man that I think is connected with the Davos group as well, and there's been a lot of conspiracy, I guess, being spun around all this in the World Economic Forum. And like I said, I don't know all the details and the ins and outs of it. I don't know anyone there personally that's excavating, but they did fund the research. But interestingly enough, they're slowing down the excavations there. Now, there's a lot of rumors that they've actually stopped excavations. I don't think that's true because of some of the interviews that the archaeologists have done recently, and they have not stated that. They did, however, say that they are slowing down excavations. But it's interesting that they want to do that to preserve the site for future generations. But at the current previous rate of excavations, it took about 10 years to excavate enclosure D alone. That's just one enclosure at the site, 10 years. And if you're looking at the whole site, you're looking at about 150 years to excavate that. So multiple lifetimes, at least 2 or 3 generations. And now they're slowing that process down. So
why do you think that is? Why do you think they're
well,
kind of halting
they say it's
things?
to preserve the site for future generations to excavate. I don't know.
Does that make any sense as an archaeologist? Does to you at least?
Well, on smaller sites, it does. They'll leave a trench so you can see the. Now, this has not always been done in the past. As the sites get excavated and everything gets tossed out, there's nothing left for anybody to see. But now they're trenching. If it's in a hill, they'll create a trench and they'll leave it so you can see all the layers of occupation going through there. I think that's a wise idea, and it's certainly prudent to do that in archaeology. But to slow down excavations, I don't know. It is painstaking. I can tell you from experience, and especially in an area, in a region like that, you have a lot of rock and hard dirt, and excavations can be very slow and they're tedious. And then trying to work through all that material, get it out of the ground, preserve it, catalog it, and try to understand what it is and what the story's telling us. And then to publish all that, that's all got to be published. So there's a lot that goes along behind the scenes of it. And part of it may be that they just need to publish a lot of material that they've already excavated, and that would allow them more time.
What with your findings and your conclusions, what do you think this site was used for? With the people that were there and all that.
Initially, the thought was by archaeologists that this was a site that they came. They had these big megalithic ritual feast. Why? Because they're along the plain of Haran. They're on the highest point of the Jurmis mountain range, overlooking all that. It's Fertile Crescent. There's a lot of game and food. There's a couple of different types of wild wheat that grows there and wild barley. They were actually fermenting beer in one of the stone vats with the barley, and a lot of game. So it's very plentiful and resourceful. But then they realized maybe that's not the case. Maybe they didn't come and leave. Why? Because adjacent to those enclosures, there's rectangular structures that are homes. And so now we believe that actually people lived at the site full time. And so what were they doing there? They were living there. This is a natural resource for them, and they stayed and they didn't leave for probably like 1,500 years. It was continually occupied until something happened that forced them out, and that's the big question mark: is what happened. So, but whatever happened, I think was a global cataclysmic event.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that can kind of, bring a little evidence to the table to why we're digging it up. Because it's either they buried it or something happened to where, I mean, is that just a natural thing that happens for sites to just naturally get buried?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, people leave, and then, the site gets abandoned and nature takes over. I say nature, but you understand, things fall down in disrepair, and it's a law of entropy, right? And then, if you're in a lower area, that gets naturally filled up over time. There's reports that the site was intentionally buried, perhaps, and backfilled. There's still some controversy on that. I think both may be true. I think both perspectives are probably true. Why? Is because some of the bigger stone heads that were found had their noses cut off and they were placed upside down at the foot of these enclosures by these big T-column pillars, and then they were buried in place. The same at Karahan Tepe and other places. These sites, at least the stone faces, not all of them, but some of them had their noses cut off, which means that they're being defaced. And it's funny because you know the whole defacing thing was kind of funny. But I guess if you cut off your nose, you're going to deface it, right? So yeah, they're being defaced, but they're put upside down on purpose, and then they're buried. That doesn't mean the whole site's buried. It means that, probably look at such a huge site, you can't. I don't think there's any way that you're going to bury that whole thing. But what you can do is bury some of it so it gets covered up and not seen or reused, and then just over the millennia of time, then that gets naturally filled in. It was kind of buried down in the hill, so you got overpressure, and that overpressure, and the burden of the overpressure probably caved in at some point and filled it in. Then you just get nature taken over and it fills in the rest of it naturally. So there's no strata in there. There's a lot of just stuff in there, but there's no actual strata of dirt. So I think probably both is true. And I address that actually in the book, about if they intentionally buried it, which it looks like it has been, at least in some regard, why they would do that. And we get it. We touch on that in the book, and I think it's fascinating if it's true why they would do it. But I'll let you read it to find out.
Yeah. Cool. Little teaser for everybody.
Yeah.
So you said this is a place where they lived, right? It could have been 1,500 years or so, and I do think civilizations in that period of time were able to, at least do some of these things megalithically, because they're kind of, some people have a hard time understanding how the pyramids were built or how, but at least for this site, it looks like it can be doable for mankind. So with the engravings, right? Because this goes nuts in the conspiratorial algorithm, especially when it comes to this site where there's engravings on these stones. What is engraved on these stones, and what do you think the people that lived there were doing with these structures?
There's multiple zoomorphic engravings of different animals that represent typically the Holocene period. These are animals such as vultures, lions, scorpions, serpents. A lot of that iconography. Pigs, wild pigs, and cattle, bovine cattle. Most of these animals are animals that are either representing probably guardian spirits, but they're designed to represent strength and power, such as in the bovine, or as a protector in the spiritual realm, such as a scorpion, or a lion or a tiger or a fox or something like this. Something that could bite you or harm you or sting you or kill you even, perhaps. So I think these are guardian type animals that are represented on the stones, that represent the spirit guardian over that site. And so this is the reason for I think that the zoomorphic iconography on the site. But then you have two anthropomorphic pillars in enclosure D that are 18.5 feet tall. They're centrally located in the enclosure, and they're anthropomorphic, meaning that they're human-like. So that we think of a T column like a traditional T, but the T on the stone, it's monolithic, meaning all one stone. It's not two separate stones put on top of each other like at Stonehenge. It's just all cut out of one single mass stone. But the T's are turned like this. So if you're facing from your direction, you're looking at the T, you're looking up at the T. No face, but there's long arms that wrap around the side. There's a belt with some design and iconography, and in the front, they are wearing foxpelt loincloths, which is fascinating. Both of them are. Now, up on where the neck area would be underneath the T head, which is faceless, no eyes, no face, there's different symbols. On Western Pillar 31, there's a bull cranium symbol, a bovine skull with horns. On Eastern Pillar 18, there is a crescent standard with either the full moon or a sun disk above that, and then an H-looking symbol above that. I've decoded, I think, those symbols, and it's not just artwork. It's not art motifs. I think this is representing language on these stones, and not just there, but at other symbols around the site there, specifically relating to Luvian logograms. This is Anatolian hieroglyphics, and that is language. And if that's language on those stones, why would I say it's language? Because one of those symbols we know very clearly and has been identified in the Luvian logogram language. Now, who's the Luvians? They were a culture contemporaneous with the Hittites. They had a common, normal, everyday language, but they had a specific language that was used for formal writing on monumental stone, and that's Luvian hieroglyphics, Luvian logograms. So what's a logogram? Logogram is one symbol that represents a word. So if you're writing on stone, you don't have a lot of space, you need to make it count, you're going to use a symbol as a logogram to represent a word. We know what the symbol, there's hundreds and hundreds of these symbols. Most of them have not been identified or interpreted yet because we don't have a context for it. But we do have some that are known, and one of them is the symbol for Deus in Luvian logograms, which is the word for God. It's like a line with two parentheses above and below. This symbol, Deus, is clearly on the stones at Göbekli Tepe. So we're challenging the typical chronology viewpoint of the site, and we're not saying we're right. We're saying we're proposing some new theories. One, we're proposing that there is Luvian logograms on the stones at Göbekli Tepe. They're not well understood yet, but if they're there, there's a big problem. Why would Luvian logograms that culture didn't appear until the Bronze Age? They lived contemporaneous with the Hittites. Why would that language be on stones thousands of years before in the Stone Age? That's a big chronology problem here. That's a huge gap. Two, we're proposing the regeneration theory. So you asked earlier, what were they doing at the site? Well, they lived there, but what they were doing as well in these sacred spaces, I think in particularly in Closure D, because this is when they fully excavated, I think they were performing some kind of regeneration ceremony with rituals and libation offerings in that enclosure. We don't have time to get into all those details here because obviously after 5 years of research, there's a book that will walk you through the details of how we get there. But the regeneration theory, briefly, is when your loved one dies, they have lost their connection with God in the Garden of Eden. Right? Mankind has now experienced two deaths: a spiritual immediate death at the time of the separation, which now they're spiritually separated from God. I'm referring back to Adam and Eve in the garden, but that reverberates through the rest of the generations. Two, they physically die a natural death, which was not originally intended. So there's two deaths happening here. That spiritual death has separated mankind from God, and for them to be able to regain eternal life, instead of going and turning back towards a creator, they have turned to other gods. This is after the Tower of Babel event, because now the nation, the people are already scattered, and now there's these different languages, as evidenced by the Luvian logograms, I think, on the stones there. So people have already turned to other gods at this point, searching for a way to reconnect with God. With the exception, they have now started turning their attention to other gods, and they're deifying these other gods, such as they're deifying the image of the bull, they're deifying the image of the moon and the sun. Of course, the Egyptians, made that pretty famous with the deification of the sun god, and later the Pharaoh becomes actual deity himself, living deity, which was the ruler of Pharaoh. It was his rulership, but that double crown he wore with the vulture and the serpent, scholars will tell you, well, that's his symbology of ruling both Upper and Lower Egypt. Actually, which is probably true, but it's also a deeper meaning behind that, and that signals his power of Pharaoh over life and death with regarding to those two images. So if we look at symbologies, symbols in the book as well, but mostly symbols remain the same throughout cultures and time. But the symbology here is that they have turned their attention to worshiping other gods. So the regeneration theory is, for your loved one to reach eternal life, after you have died, and whether they did a sky burial or how they did it, they just took your skull. Usually after about, I think forensic work on this shows after about a year, they would take the head from the body. This explains the drill holes in the skulls. You don't need the whole body. You just need the skull. They would take the skull of their loved one or their ancestor. They would drill a hole in it. This why there's evidence of drill holes in the skull, and they would suspend them in there. They would take them into this sacred space like Enclosure D. They would perform a ritual ceremony for that loved one, so they can assure their spirit that went back to the netherworld. It didn't go to heaven. It went to the netherworld first, where you were destroyed by fire.
So the underworld.
The underworld. Right? And this was a destructive process that destroyed you and but by fire, but then recreated you and cleansed you in a spiritual sense, so that your spirit then could then be worthy to go back to the stars where your fathers came from, as a star god. As a star god, not just as for eternal life, but to return in the afterlife as a star god. And so we get into the Sumerian in the book about how that's possible. But I think in their cosmology, they are regenerating their loved ones back as star gods through the stones at Göbekli Tepe, in front of their two original ancestors, Adam and Eve. Western Pillar 31, and the male deity of the bovine bull, which represents the sky god An, who is the highest god in the Sumerian pantheon over all the gods. But this is the one that birthed all the other gods, including the Anunnaki. Now you have deified the image of Eve under the crescent star, and now you have your two central ancestors who happen to be dressed in foxpelt loincloths. These stone images are depicted as wearing foxpelt loincloths with these belts, showing that they are covering their nakedness. They're two giant ancestors, and your spirit goes back through the stones to return to the heavens to become a star god. That's part of the
That's
regeneration
crazy.
theory.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's definitely an interesting theory. And I see so many connections to possibly Nimrod, Semiramis, Tammuz, the Apotheosis rituals that, not only ancient, Osiris mythology talks about, but also, what the deists in our world also believe in. For example, the United States of America, they're doing the same thing every 4 years with the obelisk and the dome, the Capitol building and the Washington Monument. There's a crypt of George Washington at the bottom of the Capitol building, and then there's the apotheosis of George Washington, which is uh, painted on the inside of the Capitol building on the ceiling, showing you that you're dying. You're kind of going to this like Sheol or destruction area, like you were saying, but then you're there's a rebirth process to where then you're dwelling with the gods, in the stars. A lot of connections there with that.
Yeah. A lot of those cultures that you mentioned are, of course, way later on, but this is the very beginning roots, I think, of Baal worship. We're going back to the very beginnings,
Ah,
right after the Tower of Babel, and which chronology does not put it in the Stone Age. Um, so there's a couple of reasons for all that. One of them is the language we talked about, but
have they seen any other areas around the world with maybe the similar language that they wrote, or the hieroglyphics, whatever it is?
there's a site in Kara Tepe that was discovered in 1943. It's also a pre-pottery Neolithic site. They did find Luvian logograms at that site. And there's no question. It's Luvian logograms, which is, again, Bronze Age. It is not Stone Age. It's not a Stone Age culture. So I think on the surface, this appears Stone Age. Why? Because there's a lot of stone. They worked with the materials, the natural materials they had, which is stone. So you develop stoneware, lots of metates and manos, things to grind the wheat and the grains with. Sickle blades, thousands of sickle blades, obsidian, because they were close. There was a nearby volcano. And of course, this is where obsidian comes from, is volcanic glass. It's it's very, very sharp. So they made sickle blades to harvest the grain with. Probably made knives and other things with it, hunting points and things like this to hunt with atlatls and whatever they used. But definitely, it's there's a lot of things happening there. But definitely, language going back to the Luvian logograms was discovered at Kara Tepe in 1943, which confirms my theory about language at Göbekli Tepe.
Interesting. Is there any fallen angel connection, with all of this?
My co-author, Dr. Judd Burton, writes about that in the book. This is why the subtitle Biblical Anatolia and the Watchers. Dr. Burton gets into the Watcher influence about the site, how um, uh, the Watchers interfered with the affairs of mankind. This is very probable in the case of Gobekli Tepe and other cultures around, and other people around the world. But again, this is um, at um, the 0 point of human civilization. This is the cradle of civilization right here. This is right very near the garden, the original Garden of Eden, and Mount Ararat, and where Noah and his family came off the ark. This all makes sense. We talked about proximity at the very beginning, but in this particular case, of proximity to all these other regions is very probable that that this is the birthplace of civilization, not out of Africa. but out of Mesopotamia.
That's fascinating. Because you mentioned, Noah's Ark, Mount Ararat. How far would you say Mount Ararat or the possible location of the Ark would be
Mount
from here?
Ararat's several hundred miles from Göbekli Tepe. I can't remember if it's 350 miles or 500 miles. It's in that range distance. So if Mount Ararat in eastern Turkey is where I climbed back in 2013, that went out in a film called Finding Noah. It was a theatrical release in theaters. It's now on Amazon Prime if you're interested in seeing it. But it's within reason to conject that if they were in that area of the world, which is just hundreds of miles away, that it wouldn't take them very long, certainly within a generation, to travel a few hundred miles and to scatter out. This is probably several generations after that event, because you're already post Tower of Babel at this point, in my view, and my work that I've done on all this. But it's certainly not far after all this. And now we have seen the scattering of the people, the different languages, and now they're turning to other gods. And this is perhaps some of the things that they were doing at Göbekli Tepe.
So you believe this is post Nimrod, post
Yeah.
Tower of Babel? Okay, I follow that too because again, there's that apotheosis ritual that's a part of all this because it's did you say earlier that there's like sun, moon, and star worship involved in what they do, or astrology or anything like that?
Certainly in the region, they have deified the moon. We see in the around that area of Haran there. In archaeology, we see a crescent standard, and sometimes we see two male figures standing on each side of the crescent standard in reverence to the crescent moon. This is a act of worship towards that deity. Of course, in history, we know this as the moon god Sin. Now, it's spelt like if you were to spell the word sin, S-I-N, but it's pronounced Sin, as if I have seen something. This particular moon god um, was very prominently worshipped. Later on, the name changed for the lunar deity, but the deity behind the spiritual deity behind it is the same deity. It's just that over cultures the names change. So this is true with the goddess Inanna,
Right.
whose name gets
Isis and
the names change over
Ashtar
and Ishtar worship, but it's all the same female deity. But it's interesting to note, Stephen, that the deification of Eve in cultures, this deity can blend and change genders between male and female. And we touch on this in the book. How does it apply? How does this thing apply to us today? Well, what Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. If what happened in the very beginning is still happening today, how is it happening? And this is exactly what I talk about in the book, about it's the same spiritual forces, but just different. We identify it differently. But it's the same spiritual forces at work that was at work back then. Now, this is part of the book that we get into the spiritual aspects of this. This is outside the realm of archaeology at this point, but this is why the book is unique in our perspective through a biblical lens of where do you put Göbekli Tepe. And so we look at it on the Old Testament timeline. In the back of the book, there's a chronology timeline based on the Masoretic text at the top, and at the lower timeline, there's a timeline based on the Septuagint timeline. But whether you're looking at language, if you're looking at just the biblical chronology of the site, it's not Stone Age. And so it syncs up a whole lot differently. But this is the challenges of these theories, because it definitely is going to push against the mainstream theories. Again, just to preface, we're not saying we're 100% correct, and we're not dogmatic on this. We're proposing these new theories in a real scholarly way in the field of archaeology, in hopes that other scholars, perhaps in Luvian language, which are not very many, there's just a handful, and others who would step forward and take this evidence, and look at it and be able to build upon it with further evidence, maybe perhaps from current or future excavations, that would corroborate these theories. And again, with the other theory, with the regeneration site. Now, this gets into the more spiritual aspect of it, but I think exactly with the evidence that we see with the drill holes drilled through the skull fragments that have been found at that site, this is exactly what's happening. Number two, it explains the ethiophalic imagery that you see not just at Göbekli Tepe, but across this whole Tash-Taplar region. And there's a lot of this imagery across the site. At Karahan Tepe, now I mentioned Kara Tepe a while ago, but this is the neighboring site, Karahan Tepe. They found a 6-foot stone statue of a male. He's dead. Why? Because it's portraying the ribs. This is a dead person, and we see a lot of this imagery with the ribs, but it's phallic. Now, dead men don't have phallic; they're not phallic. But this is presenting a story to us. So it's not conflicting artistic imagery. It's conflicting that their ancestors who have died in death get regenerated back to the spirit world as star gods from which they think their fathers came from. And this is why you get the sky god An and the pantheon of gods and the Anunnaki. They all come from the stars. And specifically, probably towards Göbekli Tepe, it would be Orion, perhaps the constellation Taurus. Now, I know others say it's Cygnus, and that may be something to that. But if you move the time frame forward, Orion's going to be visible in the night sky at Göbekli Tepe. If you put it back in the Stone Age, 9,800 years ago, you're not going to see Orion. You'll see Cygnus, but not Orion. But I think if you move it forward, you're going to be able to see Orion and Taurus, which is above it in very close proximity to Orion. I think they're looking at those constellations because they think this is where they're going when they die. So the phallic imagery is a regeneration symbol that says that when we die, we're being regenerated back. We're living on. But the power of the human procreation through the birth of the woman carries on the father. And so this is a regeneration that in their cosmology viewpoint that they have embedded into everything that is around them, including the cycles of the wheat harvest, of life and death, of the sun, the solstices, and going from spring to summer to fall to winter, where everything dies back and then it gets rebirthed again in the spring. This is all tied into their cosmology worldview, but ultimately it points back to what they believed about the afterlife.
Oh man, it's so fascinating. Recently I've been really doing a lot of research and deep dives with Mystery Babylon and Nimrod, and where did this process or this ritual of apotheosis come from? And just to illustrate it a little bit better for some people, I do this a lot. I throw movies in there. So my kid's 2 years old and she watches Lion King all the time. She bugs me about it all the time. Put on Lion King. Well, Lion King shows you that exact ritual where the father dies, and Simba is born to take his father's throne, if that makes any sense. And with the connections of what you're talking about, where they believed that their heaven would be in the stars. Well, Mufasa, who's the father of Simba, he tells Simba when Simba's a child, he's like, when we die, we go with our ancestors and we go with our loved ones who are in the stars. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
they do put these things in movies, that are just culturally popular or easy for the eye, but they're really putting
Yeah.
ancient rituals
Huh.
right in front of us.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but yeah, I remember that. Derek
Yeah,
Gilbert's done a lot of good work in this area as well. Have you read any of his works?
yeah. I've been trying to get him on the show. He's just been extremely,
Yeah,
very busy. I saw he's
yeah, they're,
yeah, he's on a adventure.
yeah, him and his wife Sharon is in Israel right now. But
Yeah, it's so cool.
yeah, yeah, Derek Gilbert's done a lot of work. Of course, he's host of Skywatch TV. He wrote the foreword to our book, actually, Decoding Göbekli Tepe. But he's done a lot of work in this area of the Greek Titans and um, the I guess this whole world of how that he traces it all back to how that uh, gets birthed out of those legends of the Titans and things like this. And yeah, he's a great researcher and he's done a lot of good work in some of those
Yeah.
regards that you're talking about. But and I reference a lot of his work, including Dr. Michael Heiser in our book as well. So when you read our book, if you pay attention to the footnotes and the references and you follow up on the footnotes and the references, you're going to get a real education, not just on Gobekli Tepe, but you're going to get an education in other areas that you may not have considered before, but it's all referenced and resourced for you. Um, and, and look, we spent 5 years writing this book. Every one of these resources and references, I read and sourced, and it's incredibly time consuming to research a book like this because there was no central volume of where to find all this information. I had to find a nugget here, and then months would go by and I find a nugget here and then find a nugget here. Judd would find something. This is really one single volume up to date that you can find a lot of this information in and follow up on the sources. So if you want to know something about the grains and the agriculture and all that, that's all sourced in the book. If you want to know something about the Ice Age and the Younger Dryas event, we've got all that stuff in there. And look, this is not just a Christian book, although it is. We mainly wrote it for people who just loved general archaeology or interested in particularly in Gobekli Tepe. But these sources are mainly for people to go back and look for themselves to follow through with where this information is pointing back to. But you'll definitely get a reference and an education on a lot of this. So it's not just biblical references. There's a lot of secular references that we use in the book as well.
Awesome, man. So with the book, with the 5 years of hard work it took, what is your favorite part about you know what you wrote about?
Well, it's a hard question because it's all my favorite. And there
Yeah.
was things that was unexpected that I did not intend to write on, um, that I had no intention on writing on, but the book led me in the direction where I had to explain some things about the flood. We talk about, so what about the flood? Well, in order to understand that there was a actual flood, I have to talk about the geology and some of the evidences that's based on a global flood. So uh, I wasn't intending on talking about the Ice Age, but I had to talk about something about the Ice Age because you have to understand the Ice Age and the Younger Dryas event to understand what's happening in this time period. That was a global catastrophic event. It was not localized. So the Younger Dryas events, secular terms, something happened. Global temperatures drop at least 30 degrees. The waters in the ocean level drop between 200 and 400 feet. The earth gets drier and colder, and it forces people to move. Why? Because that Fertile Crescent's no longer fertile anymore. Those animals are moving. The people have to move. They're forced in caves. They're forced underground. They're forced to move with the animals. This forces people in a forced migration. So they get culturally reset at the flood. They come off the ark. They have to start from square one. They get hit again, which is probably 500 years after the flood. They get hit with the Younger Dryas event or the Biblical Ice Age. And now this is at maybe perhaps 1,000 years of time where this is playing out. This is not just a one-off. This is a very long time. They get culturally reset again during this time, and it's these time frames are very long, and there's a thing called the Karasog epic. We actually write in the book, in the Karasog epic, historically describes a 1,000-year storm, which almost perfectly syncs up with the Younger Dryas event, the Biblical Ice Age as well. So this is a period of time where even here on this side of the world, it impacted. There was a huge Pleistocene extinction where all these Ice Age animals get wiped out. Woolly mammoths, the rhinos, the dire wolves, the saber-toothed cats, the three-toed horses, the camels. All these animals get wiped out. Not in the flood. They get hit with another catastrophic event, and that's earthquakes going off all around the world, spewing out sulfuric dioxide and carbon dioxide and sulfur out into the air, blots out the sun, causes another global catastrophe where all that stuff comes down in acid rain and ash, and they get buried and they die in those conditions. This also affected the Native Americans. There's evidence of that in near Clovis, New Mexico, where there's a record of habitation, and then all of a sudden there's just absence. There's just nothing happening. And the Younger Dryas, I think, explains all that. So this is a global catastrophe that's hit them again.
Yeah, the Younger Dryas impact theory is it's super deep. I think it's Randall Carlson who I think really awakened people to the idea. I also think, oh man, who's the guy on Joe Rogan's show? Oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name. He's like got a weird accent.
The young Canadian.
Oh, anyway,
biblical scholar. Are you talking about
no,
Randall Carlson was on Joe's program as well?
Yeah. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's the guy who usually goes on with Randall Carlson. They've gone on together in the past.
Oh, okay.
He's an author. Yeah, kind of writes about ancient civilizations and stuff like this. But,
you're talking about David Hatcher Childress.
That might be him. That might be him.
Or
but, I can't believe that.
Or you're referring to Graham Hancock.
Graham Hancock.
Who's done,
Graham Hancock.
Yeah,
there we go.
He's got his series on Netflix now on Ancient Apocalypse. Yeah, that's Graham Hancock. Yeah.
Yes. Appreciate you, man. Thank you very much for giving me your time tonight. I think Man, we covered a lot of information. Everyone learned something today, and they can learn more if they check out your book and where they can support you the most. If you wouldn't mind, where could they find your material and your work?
Yeah, Decoding Göbekli Tepe is up on Amazon. We now have it on Kindle. We now have it as an Audible book. Then you get the print book as well. So it's right there on Amazon. If you want to follow me, go to aaronjudkins.substack.com. I send out an article probably about once a week. It varies on different topics, from archaeology to theology to history to current events. Um, so uh, that's been fairly successful. So you can come on as a free subscriber, or you can subscribe and get some paid, the paid version of the Substack writings that I don't release out to the public. And then if you go to patreon.com/ancient pathways, there's a lot of my work is there. Films, books. I have a huge library of resources that is available for your download. They're all PDFs. So I have an ancient histories uh, library that you can download. I have the Book of Giants, which is a various PDFs of records of giants, even going back to the 1800s. So there's volumes 1, 2, and 3 of that. They're all different. In the ancient histories volume, I have like the full Dead Sea Scrolls in English. I have this full text of the Septuagint. This is all in PDF. I have a lot of just historical writings and articles and books that are out of print. And this is a lot of years of research that I've just accumulated. That's all available there. Other books and articles and things. There's just a lot of information there, a lot of free content. But if you come on as a subscriber on the Patreon, there's a lot that's just available to you, even as a monthly subscriber. So those are the three main ways to follow my work. And if you do buy the book, you can listen to it. We ask that you just go back to Amazon and leave us a review. We don't have a whole lot of reviews on the book. It's just less than a year old. But I get a lot of great comments, but people don't go back to Amazon and actually leave the comment. Sometimes they'll just put a star rating on there, but if you actually leave a comment as well, that really helps promote the book on Amazon and help it trend. It released on Amazon #1 in 3 categories initially: in prehistory, in archaeology, and in ancient knowledge. So leaving that comment and the star review really helps us with trending the books. We ask if you enjoyed the book and you got something out of it to please go back and do that, and then share it with your friends and family this Christmas.
Yes. Stop being lazy, people. Drop a 5-star review. Drop a comment. Help us out here. Okay. I always kind of encourage everyone to really kind of do those things, because it is, in a way, what helps push our material out there for others to see. And, I do think that it's just, in general, it's just the best way to support us, and it's free. It just takes a couple of minutes of your time.
Yeah.
But
And we're so thankful for the people who've already bought the book and read it. If you haven't gone back to leave that review, just go back and leave the review. It'd be great. It'd really help us. But thanks, for the time on the podcast and with your audience, and thank you for those who have supported us already. And it was a real journey to get this book out. But it's finally out, and we're so glad it is, and we're really proud of it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I value your research, your time, the adventures you've been on. And I also, I value the time you've given me tonight to share these things, not just with me, but with the audience. And so I just want to say I deeply appreciate that, man. Much love for you. Blessings to you and your journey. And well, with all that said, Dr. Aaron Judkins, everyone. Be sure to check out his stuff and support him where he needs it the most. All right, brother. Thank you again, and hopefully I'll see you again in the future.
God bless everyone.
All right, everyone. Biblical Hitman Debrief. Another one in the books. Dr. Aaron Judkins, everyone. It's a very special moment to have that gentleman on the show. He's been around, man. He's been with the big hunchos, man. He's a big huncho himself, and so I appreciate you, man, for giving your time to the podcast, giving your time to the audience, being able to share the research that you've been working very hard on throughout the years. And his book is a book that is in the bookshelf. It's one of those that I do have to come around to. It's really crazy. I've become like this book collector, so things get backed up. You try to focus on one thing, but then you see another book and you get this urge to go read it, and you flip through it, you get through a few chapters, then you go to another book. So I got to get that organized here. But hey, listen, Gobekli Tepe. Very interesting site. There's so much to it. There's really a lot of history, especially in this site. And I'm gonna get through the book. I'm gonna dig more into the theories, because he even mentioned, right, there's multiple theories with a lot of these things. We got into the idea of what the basic religion basically was consuming the people of the site, and it really does. It goes all the way back to, in my opinion, this is my opinion, but it goes back to ancient Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz worship. You have the worship of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Exodus talks a lot about this. Moses brings it up. It's something that people have. It's something that the world has always turned back to. And I think it all comes from Cain. It stems from Cain and through that lineage, and then that lineage, you have to understand, where did that lineage come up with this? It's just not the normal nature of human beings to do this, even though if you do go to somewhere in a very remote location of the world and there's uncontacted tribes there, they're also worshiping multiple gods. They see a lot of creation as having a connection to a specific god. And I think it's part of maybe the fleshly desires, but I also think it comes from what is known throughout biblical scriptures as a familiar spirit, the world. It's the spirit that's in the world. And I think that has a direct correlation with the serpent. I think there's a direct correlation with the fallen when it comes to this. And we have to understand, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but we're wrestling against principalities, powers, and darkness in very high places. It's a very complex piece of scripture when it's talking about that. And it's way more condensed than what Paul's talking about there. This is something where the metaphysical world, it has a lot involved in it, and it's consuming the physical world. It's consuming nature. There's a mystery Babylonian religion that constantly still stays the same. It's a similar familiar spirit. It tries to act like the Holy Spirit, but it in everything in its characteristics, everything that describes what it is, shows you paganism. It shows you sun, moon, and star worship constantly. If anything, it glorifies the moon worship. And I think this is because when you had Nimrod, you had Semiramis and Tammuz. Nimrod dies, and he obviously, through a beam of sunlight, impregnates Semiramis, right? And so Semiramis becomes this queen of Babylon, this queen of heaven. You have to understand, I believe these people were the ones who were dwelling in the Tower of Babel. Or you can have different speculation of what you think, what the tower looked like. Was it an actual tower? Is it what they show us on social media, where it's a spiraling staircase on the exterior of a telescopic, piece of architecture going up to the heavens? Maybe it was a pyramid, right? So there's or a ziggurat or something along these lines. You have to understand that the divine feminine worship was stronger than Nimrod, in my opinion. I think it was stronger than Nimrod because there was a miracle that they say happened, which I don't think it was a miracle. I think Jesus Christ is the only being in this entire storyline to be born of immaculate conception. It was the power of God that has it's God that has the power to do these things. But you obviously have Satan, who's trying to counterfeit and trying to invert, trying to mimic all of these things. And this is where you get this spiritual trinity, right, of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. You have Semiramis being worshipped as this queen of heaven, and she's able to birth Tammuz, the son who is the reincarnation of her husband, right? It's the constant thing that we started covering and getting into pertaining to people dying, going to the underworld, and then boom, going up to the stars. It's that constant rebirth idea. And it stems to the Phoenix conspiracy of what that kind of consists of. The Phoenix is what sheds its old skin and rebirths into a new one. um but it's reincarnation. It's Shiva, right? You can see the similar trend of the spirit that is consuming the world with these paganistic ideas and the religion that does sit behind it. There is a spirit to it. I don't know if it's a bunch of these fallen angels that are really running the game behind the scene, if it's one fallen angel, right? If it's Satan himself, right? If it's a single individual. I think that there's multiple players involved here trying to push a narrative and trying to push an agenda. And you can see it. You can see it right now in Washington, D.C. You can see it with the dome, the obelisk, the ancient Osiris mythology, in front of us. Right, every 4 years they're doing these things. And plus the architecture there is Roman. I mean, it's paganistic. We are still worshiping these entities, these beings, these sky daddies, these, the celestial mafia, as Gary Wayne likes to call it. It's because they want to be God. They want you to believe that when you die, you go up into their heaven, you go up into the stars. This is the false religion. Okay, understand that. And this is a big part of why not only Christ had to die, but he had to come to earth and he had to crush all of this, right? He had to crush the serpent's head, right? Remember that, okay? But he also had to do away with this whole system that was a stronghold uh, in the world. And obviously the most important part of that is that we're sinners and we do need a savior, and that Jesus Christ, our Lord, our God, is the one who came and died for us so that we can believe in him and have eternal life. And this is even the best part of it. He picked up his own life. Okay, there is no reincarnation of Jesus Christ. There's resurrection. It's the complete opposite of reincarnation. This is why the devil has created this idea to be a part of this mystery Babylonian religion, because when the Antichrist comes and the Antichrist dies, the Antichrist is going to be a reincarnation, right, after the fatal head wound, and where he reincarnates as Satan in the flesh. Okay, so this is what's going on here with this whole idea. And again, it's crazy. It's a lot. Let's just slow down with it, pick it apart, and that's what we're going to do here on the show. But hey, shout out to Aaron. Thank you again, brother, for giving your time and the knowledge and all of the things that you were able to share with us this episode. A lot of fun. Be sure to check out his stuff, support him where his outlets are. But hey, listen, if you're still hanging out with us, much love to you. Thank you, everyone, for getting through the ad space, getting through the things that support this show the absolute most. Much love to y'all, and I appreciate y'all. And I just wanted to share that with y'all. I'm doing this every episode because it's just in my heart to do so. But the other ways to support the show as well, you can head over to YouTube if you haven't done so already. If you're listening to the show right now and you have a YouTube and you haven't subscribed, get on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Okay, like the show, share it with your friends, and drop a comment. I do try my best. I try my best, and everyone knows this. I try my best to try and to comment back to every comment that's dropped. So that's something that I try to engage with everyone. And just to keep it flowing. Also, hey, listen, if you're not into the video stuff, YouTube, head on over to the audio. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and Spotify. When you're there, if you like the show, make sure to drop a 5-star review. It's really easy. If you're a first-time listener, you can skip through the episodes. You just hit that fast forward 15-second button a few times. It'll give you the opportunity to then leave a review. So I would kindly appreciate that. It's the currency that helps get the show out there, and it's another way to support the show. Also, hey, listen, if you didn't drop a follow, anywhere, make sure you drop follows, okay? And hit that notification bell. You'll be notified when episodes get released. We release audio episodes in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And we also release YouTube episodes at night, 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Okay, so the content's going to keep flowing as long as I'm living, and I'm not feeling that good right now. I've got a lot going on in my life, and I'm working through that. God's getting me through it. It's a heck of a fire, I tell you that, and it hurts. And that's a fireman saying all that. So, haha, joke's on me, right? Also, I've got extreme headache. Got my body's kind of getting knocked down by some things. Yes, I was on a cruise with a vacation that I shared with my family, and I'm not sure if it was either that got me sick or if me cleaning out my project site for where my house is getting built, which is a complete disaster. A lot of dust in the air. Not sure exactly, but pray for me. Pray for my health. Pray for my well-being. Pray for my family, and pray for this show. And much love. I have a lot of appreciation and respect for each and every one of you. So God bless. That's a wrap. Hey, gonna see you next time.